Well, hello again. This is Brian Copeland talking. Welcome to another edition of Copeland's Corner. Welcome to our new home on YouTube, which is the Really American channel. If you are watching us on the Copeland's Corner channel, you get 2 more weeks before we stop dropping this show over there. And the only place you can see it is right here on Really American. If you're listening to us on podcast, on the audio portion of the show, nothing changes. So wherever you're listening to us, whoever your favorite podcast provider is, we will continue to be there. But if you're watching us, this is the place to see us. So, but let's just kick it off. This is the part of the show that we call Headliners on the Headline. So we'll have a panel of comics and we'll talk about some of the news of the week. And boy, yes, there's some stuff to talk about this week right now. Chris Riggins is here from Los Angeles. Welcome, Chris. Good to see you, buddy.
What's up, guys?
First time on the Really American channel, so good to have you, man.
Really American.
Justin Lockwood is here, who we had on last week, and I had to have back because I was saying looking at all the comments from last week, people either love you or they want you to shut up. That's what they actually say.
We love you, Justin.
My wife feels the same way, so that's fine.
As most wives do.
As most wives, all wives do. All right. Let's start with this. Last week when we recorded, and we record this on Wednesdays, by the way, and it drops Thursday, Friday, depending upon where you're watching or listening to us. We were talking about how the jury might come back in the Trump case, in the New York hush money case. The jury had just began deliberating, and we didn't know how long it was going to take, what they were going to come back with. Personally, I expected at least 1 or 2 counts to come back as guilty. I expected most of them to be hung up. They were not going to get a unanimous verdict on most of these because all it takes is 1 for it to be hung. And I never in a million years thought that they were going to convict him, even though I believed, on everything. And I watched it pretty closely. I believed that all the evidence was there and that he was guilty of everything he was accused of. But I never thought that 12 people were all going to agree. You can't get 12 people to agree on anything. It really is. It's hard to get 12 people to agree on anything, let alone 34 counts. So I'll start with this. Surprised at all that verdict came back the way that it did.
Yeah, I was shocked, not because of any kind of belief in its guilt or innocence, but just shocked that our system delivered something like this. And you brought up last time I was on the show that things could come back hung, which I actually hadn't considered. It was like, it's going to be guilty, not guilty, but I hadn't really thought about there's going to be most of these that they just couldn't get consensus on. And that's, after you said that, I was like, that sounds right to me. So then when they came back and it was unanimous, and I don't know if you've listened to the audio, but I mean, it's like a techno track. They just wrap them up. It's like count 1, guilty, count 2, guilty, count 3. You could dance to it. It was just a minute of just wildness. I thought the whole thing was surreal. If you haven't listened to the audio, I really encourage you to go listen to it because it is surreal.
Yeah, I haven't been paying attention. I just really kind of have tuned this part of the world out because it's just so frustrating to even delve into it, because we used to live in a world that if somebody was found guilty or innocent, that's what the people went with. And even if we didn't feel that way, we respected that decision. Now we live in this world where 34 counts of guilt, and we still got people out here donating millions of dollars to him to be the president. And I'm just like, I don't know if I'm surprised. I am not. I am surprised in the sense that being a black man and seeing how the judicial system has constantly worked correctly for the benefit of those who are white happens.
Or wealthy. Or wealthy. Or both.
Shout out OJ. I have to say, I was surprised they convicted him. I truthfully didn't think that they would. But then also, I after the conviction, I kind of talked to a bunch of people and started reading a few articles. And I realized he probably didn't help himself because, it's so much evidence that was really there. It's almost like if they didn't convict him, it would definitely be something like, okay, this is all rigged. We got to all move to Berlin. We can't live here anymore.
Well, they barely put on a defense. I mean, that was the whole thing too. They barely put on it. It was a real half-assed defense. And I think,
his arrogance. I think that arrogant half defense thing probably made those jurors like, oh, you're not even taking us seriously. Y'all don't even realize we could affect. Okay, bet. New York, stand up. And that's what happened.
They say on the night of, I read somewhere on the night of the verdict that there were crowds standing outside of Trump Tower chanting, "New York hates you, New York hates you, New York hates you." I mean, so it's just, now the next question is what happens? What happens from here? Because there is a lot. Well, I'll just read you some of the stuff. These are just some tidbits we can comment on. Okay, recent polls say that a plurality of Americans think that the verdict was right. So you listen to the Republicans; they say that America is up in arms. America thinks he was railroaded. It was rigged. It shows our justice system is politicized and weaponized and broken. But the majority of the plurality. Okay, the plurality of Americans who have been polled say that the jury got it right. People who are independents and those who they call double haters, who hate both Trump and Biden, are weighing the case and taking the guilty verdict into consideration as they consider who to vote for. And they, by and large, believe that the jury got it right. But now, I don't like either one of them, but they're leaning towards, I'm for sure not able to vote for this guy if he's a convicted felon. The overwhelming number of Republicans, even the sane ones, say that the trial was politically motivated, it was a scam, it was rigged, and they are standing behind Trump. And now there were some people that really surprised. Susan Collins of Maine, who's a moderate, you got Mitch McConnell, who stood up there after the impeachment, saying that he could be held accountable for things once he was out of office and all of this. And yet he endorsed him, and Nikki Haley turned around and after all the things she said, she's turned around and endorsed him. And a couple of Republican legislators have spoken off the record, anonymity, and said that, look, I had to say this. I had to publicly, this is the position I've got to take, or I'm going to piss off his base. MAGA, now this is the part that is scary. MAGA fanatics are threatening the lives and the families of the jurors, of the DA, some of Trump's lawyers. They're trying to unmask the jury. The jury is anonymous. We don't know who the jurors are. And you get all these internet sleuths, all these right-wing internet sleuths who are trying to find out what their names are, where they work, where they live, who their family members are, so they can dox them. And once they're doxed and all their information's out, I mean, you saw what happened to Paul Pelosi. They're in real danger. I guess the judge has got, and Alvin Bragg both, the DA have got round the clock security because of death threats that they're getting. And just an example of some of the stuff they're doing is the mother of one of the officers who was one of the Capitol Police officers who was injured on January 6th, who I believe was part of the Robert De Niro press conference. His mother got swatted. You know what swatted is when they call the police and say there's a gun situation or a hostage, and SWAT shows up, and people have gotten killed, because they're getting swatted. Michael Cohen says that if Trump loses the election, that what we're seeing now, how crazy they're acting, and they're losing their crap right now, that this is the beginning of something that's going to make January 6th look like a Sunday school picnic. So I guess the first question I have to ask you is this. If you had the opportunity, if you were chosen to sit on one of these Trump juries, knowing what it is that would you do it?
Yep. In a heartbeat.
And you both have got families. You both have got kids.
Yep. If you don't, here's the thing. Most of the most terrible things in history have happened because people who had an opportunity to say nothing said nothing. You know what I mean? It's like if you sit back and you just keep saying, oh, well, they're going to riot. Oh, they're going to do this. Oh, they're going to do that. And you're living your life in fear. You're giving them the green light. That's why racists have this bravado now, because so many people have decided to just say, well, this is their opinion. If they don't like black people, that's their opinion. If they hate gays, that's just an opinion. Instead of saying, no, we have to actively stop these people. And if it's not me, it's not going to be someone else, because we keep waiting for somebody else to do it. Like, it's, for instance, like this whole discussion around like George Zimmerman. You remember George Zimmerman? He killed Trayvon Martin.
I remember. Yeah.
There's a discussion in the Black community where a lot of people feel like it's not, somebody needs to take him out. George Zimmerman's still walking around. And I'm like, then you do it. Because if you're going to keep asking for other people to do some murderous stuff, then you should do it, since you feel that strongly. So I feel like I can't keep asking people to step up and do this if I'm not going to do it. So if I have the opportunity to sit in that jury and objectively decide if this person is, I'm going to do it.
Based on the evidence. And let me clear something up before we get a bunch of crap. And that is, you are not advocating the murder of George Zimmerman. That's not.
No, I'm not advocating the murder of anybody. I don't think anybody.
Example.
I'm making it. Yeah.
Okay, but here's the thing: is it's easy just for us to sit here and say that I would do it, but again, you've got kids, and they are going after family members. And I got to tell you, that would give me pause. I know the right thing to do is to sit on that jury, but I have children, and but if I don't stand up, who will? I hear exactly what it is you're saying. Now you're saying, Justin, that no, because of your son, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would very much like to. I always try to be honest on this thing and say, like, if there was a button and somebody asked me, like, you have to make a decision, like, right now, whether or not you're going to do this. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'd be able to, like, get myself to that place just like this. My son's starting high school. I would be deeply worried about him. I'd be worried about my wife. I'd be worried about my other family. It would be it's a big decision. It's an incredibly scary one. And so the honest answer is that while I am aligned with everything that Chris said, if somebody was like, right now, say it, no, I can't say yes to that. Like, right now, I'll have to sit with that and, like, work my way to it. Because it's anybody who says that they wouldn't be terrified to do it. I just, okay, I guess you're a different person than me, because I would be terrified.
You're a loner or you're a liar. You're a loner.
Well, here's the thing, and there's nothing wrong with being terrified and doing this.
No, there's
like,
not.
Everything we do, we like. Every transition in life, you're scared to do it, but you do it. That's the difference between fear and bravery. Fear is knowing, hey, I'm scared of something. Bravery is saying, I know I'm scared of it, but I'm gonna face it anyway. Mm-hmm. So that I totally get. Like, I have 2 daughters, I have family and all that, but also I think because, and this is just me, because I have Black women in my family, and I have for my entire life seen Black women at every chance, every forefront, be the only people to stand up and say something's wrong and then be vilified for it. I've watched Black women defend Black men, white men, Black women. I saw a Black woman dive on a Trump supporter who was getting beat up. She dove on his body to say, stop this. No, nobody was stepping in. It's just so, and so I can't sit back and say, and let my fear take over, because that's exactly what they're waiting for. That's exactly what they're banking on, that people are going to be scared. That's why they talk. Like, I'm not worried about them doing a bigger January 6th, because here's the thing. January 6th, that was not planned. Nobody planned to do that. That was like,
actually, it was planned. Actually, it was planned by the Oath Keepers and some of these other groups. I mean,
but it wasn't organized. It wasn't an organized event.
Parts of it were organized.
Yes, of course. Well, here's the thing. But I'm saying small parts. The portion of the people who were organized are so small. The rest of that crowd was just caught up in the moment. So what I'm seeing is that we need to do the same on the other side. If they see you do it, they see me do it, then everybody's like, oh, okay, Justin and Chris is standing up. Well, let's go over there and stand up too. I hadn't planned on standing up for this, but let's go over there and do it too, because I feel like, Justin, like you have people that do love you. And if they see you doing that, they're going to want to protect you. And they're going to say, you know what? I'm not going to let my boy be out there like that. I wish somebody would come to his house, because I got friends who I can't name, who I don't, but I know for a fact that somebody mess with me, they're going to be there in a heartbeat, and it's not going to be a pretty sight. So I know, I know for a fact I have those people. So that's what kind of, in my kids is what pushes me to do it, because it's like, man, I'm not going to be on this planet all that much longer. I mean, I have to leave the planet some way. And if I get to my deathbed and I didn't do nothing, I can't die happy, and that's just how I feel. But
And
I totally get it.
what you're saying makes
Most of
100%.
most of my friends and crew are Jews and vegans, so I'm not as protected.
The vegans are not going to be much help.
They're not going to.
They got no strength. They're not going to be very.
They're going to lie down. They don't have enough protein.
I will tell you that if we were called and we didn't go, then they win, because that's what all MAGA is, all Trumpism is bullyism, if that's a word. That's what it is. It's all intimidation. It's all about being a bully. And what my grandma always taught me, when I was being picked on at school, she'd say, "Well, hit his behind back." And I would say, "Well, Grandma, he's bigger than me." "Well, then the harder his ass go hit the ground," she would say. And you know what? She was right. The first
my mom
time
said,
I
pick
hit.
up a stick.
Really?
My mom said, if somebody pick up the closest thing to him and knock their head off, or as she would say, knock the cowboy boogie out of them. So same thing. You gotta fight back, or they're gonna continue to put their foot on your neck.
All right. One of the things that they look at, there is a pre-sentencing evaluation that's done by the probation department or something with a convicted felon who prior to sentencing in the state of New York, and I guess most jurisdictions do this, where they're going to sit with him and do an evaluation, then write up a paper and send the evaluation to the judge to look at before he passes sentence. And the judge can do whatever he wants. He can either go along with what the sentencing recommendation is, or he can completely and totally disregard it. And whereas for the things that he was convicted of in terms of the falsification of business records and that kind of stuff, generally they don't send people to jail like that for that. However, the underlying felony, the thing that made this a felony, that they were interfering with an election, is something that is very, very serious. So in terms of what they normally would do with the charges like this, and what they're going to do in terms of this, because of how the seriousness of what they were trying to do with the falsification of records, that throws that precedent out. But the other part of it is they look at whether or not the person has taken accountability and responsibility for what it is they did, and whether or not they show any remorse. And he shows absolutely not any remorse, none, zero. It's still, it's Biden who put this together, somehow put together a state prosecution. It's the judge's fault. It's the judge's daughter's fault. It's the DA's fault. They made this up. This is a scam. It was not fair. He takes zero responsibility. So taking these things into account, plus the fact that he's got 10 criminal counts of contempt. I mean, you or I, would go to jail. We wouldn't get $1,000 fine if for each count of criminal contempt. We might get a warning the first time. I doubt we get that. But we might get a warning the first time. Second time, we'd be in jail. It wouldn't take 10. So that's something they're going to look at. So taking these things into account, do you think, let's handicap this, do you think that they're going to send him, that Judge Marchand will send him to jail?
No.
Not.
Then you can never send. Then you can send you. Then what you're saying is that the rule of law still is a crock of crap, because they say they're treating him like a regular person, and like anybody else, and anybody else would go to jail for that.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's still America. I mean, they can't give us everything. I mean, come on, man. They convicted George Floyd's killer. Isn't that enough? They wrote Black Lives Matter on the street. Come on. They're not concerned about getting it right. They convicted him because it was one of those things where they probably could not convict him. It's like, dang, we can't spin this. We got to convict him. But at the same time, they're going to be like, yeah, but you know what? He learned his lesson. Bad Donald.
We just don't go to jail for this kind of thing. We just don't, with some exceptions, we don't put people in jail for
trying to subvert an American election.
But that's not what he did.
But that's exactly
you're right.
That's what the jury said he did. But that's exactly what the jury said he did.
Where? Show me where they said that.
That's what makes it a felony, Justin. That's what makes it a felony. What makes it a felony?
That's not right.
You need to read about the case then. What made this a felony as opposed to being a misdemeanor, what rose it to the level of a felony was that what they were doing in terms of the falsification of business records, which normally would have been a misdemeanor, becomes a felony when it's in the furtherance of another felony. And what the felony this was in furtherance of was interference in an election. They proved that he did not want that Stormy Daniels stuff to come out 2 weeks before the election, because he knew that on the heels of the Access Hollywood tape, that this would be it. I mean, that he barely scraped through in terms of that. But if this came out on top of it, it's over. And he won by 80,000 votes over a handful of states. And that may have been enough. That may have been enough to swing the election. But they proved that that's what it was. So that's one of the things that the jury had to find him guilty on all 34 counts. So in terms of, do we put people in jail for stuff like this? It's never happened before, but it's still a felony.
But I don't know. Do all felonies get jail time?
Interpretation of it. I mean, I'll jump
Depends.
on Google, but that is not my understanding of what.
Okay, tell me your understanding.
These were financial crimes. He was convicted of falsifying records, of falsifying the amount of monies that he was worth, by falsifying the value of his properties, by falsifying.
That's a different case. That's a different case. You're
Oh.
talking. It's not the same case. The falsification of records in terms of his property was the civil case against the Trump organization, in which he was overvaluing the size and value of his properties. When he wanted to get a loan, he'd say it was, 100,000 square feet or 200,000 square feet and worth $500 million. And then when it came time to pay taxes on it, property taxes, he'd say it was only 5,000 square feet and worth, $10,000. That's what that case was about. That's not this. What this is about is the fact that he had one of his surrogates Michael Cohen at his direction pay off a hush money to a porn star not to tell her story. Then he reimbursed the porn star using company checks and claiming that the reimbursement was for legal fees. That's what this was.
What he did with what he was convicted of, Brian, and that is a really important thing to point out. You are confusing what he did with what he was convicted of. I'm looking at it right here. I'm Googling it and looking at it on CBS, New York Times. I'm looking at two different articles. He was convicted of falsifying business records.
Okay, now look further in terms of why it is.
But he wasn't convicted to the level of, or the why. That's not how the law.
But yes, he is. That's why it is that they made the case that they made. Why do you think that they spent all this stuff?
Not what he was convicted of. It's important. He was not convicted of subverting an election. He was convicted of falsifying.
He was convicted.
But wasn't he using
both? But he was convicted.
Wasn't he using campaign funds to pay her though? Didn't he take money from the campaign, which is donations,
which is
and
also
pay her?
No.
I think it's honestly, and I'm listening to both of you. It sounds like you're both saying the same thing, and you're both right about just the semantics of which charge, because it's 34 counts. So it might be one count is what you're talking about, Justin, and it might be a couple of counts of what you're talking about, Brian, because it sounds to me like the same case. It just sounds like it's all convoluted, because from what my understanding is, like I said, I tend to tune this type of shit out. Stuff out. My conclusion is that he was using campaign funds to do illegal stuff. That's my base.
It wasn't campaign funds.
Okay.
Michael Cohen took out a $130,000 second on his personal residence to pay Stormy Daniels hush money. And then Donald Trump paid him back $260,000 because he had to make him whole. And if he'd have paid him $130,000 as a legal fee, then taxes would have come out. So he paid him $260,000 to cover the taxes with checks from the Trump organization and claimed that it was money for legal fees. Right. And which means, by the way, on top of that he deducted it as a business expense.
And that is the falsification.
All
of
right,
business records.
but he did it in furtherance of a conspiracy, and that's a part of the
Which
charges.
he was not convicted of. He was not convicted
you
of
need-
conspiracy. You are confusing what he did with what he was convicted of.
You need to look at this.
I am looking at it, Brian.
There's no way you're looking at all 34 counts of
I
this.
am. I have a list of them. I have.
Dude, you don't have time to have looked at all 34 counts of this, and
Oh
in
my
terms
God,
of
I wish I could,
what the nuances of this thing were. But
I don't need to know the
Okay, you know
nuances. To look at the counts.
He's guilty and he needs to go to jail. That's the
All right,
bottom line.
let's drop this for a second. Let's set this aside for a second. And let me ask you this question. All right, let me ask you this question. Michael Cohen, the guy who did this, the guy who actually paid the money, the guy who took out the second, the guy who received the checks, went to prison for it. He went to prison for it. So is it right that the guy who was acting on his directions went to prison for, I think, 18 months or 2 years or something for it, and was disbarred, while the guy who ordered it's like the mob boss ordering the hitman going to prison, and the mob boss, yeah, okay, we proved that you did it, but you're not the one that pulled the trigger.
But this is the same thing that happened with Nixon. I mean, the people that went to jail are just acting on orders. It's the same kind of
Well,
thing.
the only reason Nixon didn't go to jail was because Gerald Ford pardoned him. Otherwise,
Right.
Nixon would have gone on trial, would have been indicted, would have gone on trial, and in all likelihood would have gone to
Maybe.
jail.
I don't know.
But the reason he was pardoned was because Gerald Ford said, and he was now looking at around us now, he was absolutely right, that it would tear the country apart. That's what he said. He said that it would tear the country apart to put an American president on trial. And so
Like the
that's why
country's
he's
ever
already
been together.
Well,
I know, I hear you.
I mean, I wouldn't say what he did was right, but okay.
Well, I would agree too. And actually, there are people now, and believe it or not, there are Democrats who are saying that Biden should pardon Trump.
Oh my
I'm
God!
serious.
You mean Democrats want to not do the hard thing? My God! I said, let me get my.
I know, right?
Where are my pearls? Oh my gosh! The
Wait, I gotta get
Democrats
right here.
don't
Hold on.
want to do the hard work. Oh my!
Oh, Lord.
I'm sorry.
So-
I had to take a minute with
But
my.
see, that
my
would be-
picture.
Show us on the bear where they hurt you. Show us on the bear where they hurt you.
Wait, I have to go. I'll just.
Show us on the bear where he touched you.
Oh my God!
Show us on the bear where he touched you. See,
I am not surprised.
No, but see, I would
Democrats are weak.
No, but I would totally disagree. That's not the hard thing. That's the easy thing. The easy thing is to not hold him accountable.
Convicting him and actually holding
That's
people
easy?
accountable.
You think that holding him accountable is the easy part?
No. Do I think it's the easy part? I think none of this is easy. There is no easy
But
part.
pardoning him is not the hard work. Pardoning him is the easy part.
That's right. Right. Which is what we're going to, which is, again, that's what I believe you just said, that want Biden to pardon him. Democrats always want to take the easy way out.
Oh, I see what you're saying. All right.
Both of these parties don't want to do the hard work. They're not in the business of hard work.
They're in the business of staying in office. Quite frankly.
I mean, look, I'm even more conspiratorial than that, but we can save that for another show.
Right. But it's that whole mindset of too big to fail, right? It's the bailout. It's the big company that instead of going under like they should and be forced to learn a lesson, they're bailed out. So my friend used to talk about how, it's no point in being left wing or right wing because it's on the same useless bird. And kind of that's where this whole situation is. That's why I really don't get too involved in it, because I'm like, yeah, he got convicted, but that just means that all the politicians are going to find some way to cover their asses so that way they don't get convicted. And then all these other people. Yeah, it's weird. And I don't get it. I don't get how we've fallen into this trap of only being able to have two sides that are actually the same side.
But
and I'm not saying
they're not even remotely the same side.
In the trap. This
They're
is
not the same
design. This is by design. America is a pyramid scheme. None of this is an accident.
How can you say
Justin,
before, when you were
Justin.
asking me before, and Chris, again, emotionally, my brother, I am with you on the bravery front. But part of what comes up for me when you ask me, would you serve on a jury to convict Trump? Part of me that jumps up says, for what? Like, for what? I'm
I
going
get
to
it.
put my life on the line and pretend like this system isn't exactly what it is, that this pyramid scheme that we call a country, I'm going to put my life on the line to save it? No, thank you. No, thanks.
I love that option.
So what you're saying is that if we went to war, for example, if we were at war, if it were a just war, like
There's no
World
such
War
thing as a
II,
just
like
war.
World War II or something, where we really are
World War
fighting for
II
freedom.
wasn't a just war.
World War II wasn't a just war. Tell me why.
No, and
Part
I
of
have
it
family
was.
that-
Fighting,
I have
fighting,
family
fighting
that
Hitler
died
for
in
keeping Hitler.
Dachau. I have family
That-
that died in
You know,
Auschwitz.
Yes,
But-
they did, and we sure as hell should have gotten there sooner.
We should have
And
gotten
FD
there when
FDR
they
should have
were
done
being
something.
marched. We got involved because we were attacked. And then we say like, well, we did it because the world and nobility and land of the free and home of the brave. Bullshit. We
You
would
on
have
it today,
watched my
Justin.
entire family burn in ovens if they hadn't flown a plane into an island that we own. So I won't swear,
Justin.
but F them.
Well,
You are on it, Justin.
I am
You
not
on
going
it today,
to
Justin.
argue. I'm not going to
Cool.
argue with. I'm not going to argue with about that point, because there's a mountain of evidence that the U.S. government knew what was going on.
It's not just evidence.
At those death camps, knew what was going on before we got involved, and did
Not
nothing
only
about
did they
it.
not do
Did absolutely nothing about it. So I will, yes, I will concede that, but the fact of the matter is, it was.
I don't
still
want to take you off your point. I know the point you're trying to drive to, Brian. So drive.
I'm asking, the point I'm trying to get to is, are you saying that there's nothing that you're willing to put your life on the line for as far as this country's concerned? I mean, I am the biggest wuss on the face of the planet. And I tried to enlist on September 12th. I literally tried to enlist.
Wow.
I call that. I know that's how objective I got. I mean,
Yo,
I'm watching.
Brian, that is, don't
I
tell the rest of the black community that. We don't need to know
I
that.
swear to
you, Chris. I wanted to say it, but I'm not the messenger.
I swear
I'm not the messenger.
hand to Christ that I sat there watching coverage, watching those towers fall. I'm crying. And I picked up, and I got 3 little kids. My kids were little kids, and I picked up the phone and I called the U.S. Army recruiting office. And I was ready to I was ready to enlist. And the only thing that saved me was, thank God, is that, because now I realize, we end up, in Iraq instead of dealing with what we should have been dealing with at the time, is that that I was 37 years old. I was 37 years old, and they told me that I was too old. That's the only.
Thank God.
That's the only reason. Well, but I went farther. Then I was going to join the USO. I figured I'll Bob Hope my ass around the Middle East, and entertain the troops. I mean, that's how red, white, and blue testosterone coursed through my veins. So I mean, and that I surprised myself. That was all emotion. And it was all emotion and patriotism and jingoism and all this other crap that I normally is not me. But there was something about listening to the stories of family members who didn't know if their relative who just went to work that day was alive or somewhere else or was under that pile of rubble, seeing over, and they kept showing. Remember, they don't show it now. I mean, you can find it on video. I'm assuming YouTube's got it somewhere, but you don't see the planes hitting the towers now. But they were showing it every 10 seconds. Every channel you flipped on, you were seeing it, and I just lost it. And I said, I got to do something. And that was what popped in my mind, is that I get Pearl Harbor now. I want to fight for my country. So there is nothing that will make you put your life on the line for this country. Nothing.
Not a thing. Not a thing.
Really?
And I don't see myself as putting my life on the line by getting a racist, pedophile, rapist convicted. I don't see that as doing it for America. I'm doing it for society, because I live in American society. I don't necessarily care about America, but I have so many people that I love and care for that live here that I want to make things better for, that I want to be an example for. So I would stand up for saying, that's why we protest. That's why we do things. That's why we, because I get it. The Black Lives Matter protests, they seem so futile. All this seems so futile. I get you, Justin. I'm as a black man, I see that hopelessness and I feel it every day. But I also know that I don't necessarily have the option to always ignore it. Like I know I've been saying I don't pay attention to what's going on, but I have to keep a side eye on, because in America, when things go bad, it hits the Black people, the brown people, the marginalized communities hardest first.
Yeah,
And
disproportionately.
we can't have everybody say, well, I can't, I got all these things I can't do. I don't, and there are so many people, like I have conversations with Black people about voting all the time. They're like, why? Why should I vote? My vote doesn't count. They just gonna do what they want to do. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I understand, but you gotta at least try to fight. You know what I mean? It's like the bully thing. Yeah, I could ignore that bully. I could take another way home. I could change schools, but there's going to be another bully at that school. There's going to be another bully on the way home. There's always going to be a bully. And if you just keep acting like it's not important enough to deal with any of them, bullies come together and then we get Trump and MAGA. And I'm not saying that's, your thought process is what caused that. What I'm saying, again, it goes back to when good people say nothing, bad people have all the spotlight. And when I'm
totally with you.
And I understand you. I get you. I'm not saying you're wrong, because we have to make these choices individually. We have to make these choices for our individual selves and our family.
But I was answering a question about like the government and war. And
not the government.
My life. It's like, but what you're talking about, Chris. And I mean, look, I used to. My mom chained me to a post when I was like 9 years old, and chained herself to it to stop offshore oil drilling in Mendocino. I've been doing this for a long time.
Really?
And if you called me up and said, Justin, this just happened, A, B, and C, I will throw my body on the gears next to you to get done what needs to get done in our community and in our corner of the world. And I've been doing that with a fair amount of frequency. I'm pretty proud.
You're pretty consistent about it.
When I was running a theater in Oregon, we got one of the first awards from the National Gay and Lesbian Caucus for putting on positive representations of gay people. I'm straight. My wife was straight. We knew what needed to be done in our corner of the world. And people did protest and they did show up, and it was super uncomfortable. And I was a very, very young man.
But you were young man without a family and without your life being on the line at the time.
Well, it was also 20 years ago, and things were a bit more tame 20 years ago.
I don't know that I would say that.
In my corner of the world, where we were in Ashland, Oregon. But just to like bring it full circle, like, there is a difference between what I will do for my country and what I will do for my countrymen. Those are different things.
So you make a distinction. You draw a distinction.
Oh, it's a huge distinction. I just don't trust the government. I'll just say it straight up. Like I said, when I say this place is a pyramid scheme, we are trapped in a terrible, terrible game here. But I love my countrymen. I do not love my government.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Let me ask you this. Can you love your country without loving your government, or loving even the concept of your government, which is the concept of your government is democracy. That's what the concept of your government.
Well, I would actually argue that, but what I will say, just to kind of like leapfrog over that, is you love the idea of what we're supposed to stand for, but never really have. Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. 100%. And if deep down in your heart you want to say, I want this place to be the thing that it says it is, yeah, 100%. We were talking about this last week when I was talking about let's give up the ghost. Let's just start having politicians stop lying to us and say, of course I'm this, of course I'm that. And so, yeah, it's all, to me, again, going back to that thing of just getting rid of illusion. Let's just take this thing away from our eyes, stand up and say, we have never been what we've wanted to be, but deep down in our hearts, do we still long for it? I think we all do.
And I will tell you, I do think that that's a legitimate argument and it's a legitimate point. And what just popped into my head, there was a show that NBC had on a couple of seasons ago that I loved called Timeless. Either you ever see it. And what the premise of it, it was a time travel show. And what the premise of it is that there was a white man and a white woman who had a black engineer who had a time machine, who were traveling through time, trying to find this evil guy who was traveling through time in a different machine, trying to mess stuff up and trying to change history. And in the very pilot, when the African American, engineer realizes he's got to go throughout history with these people, he goes, "There's no time in America that's a good time for me." There's no time. You want
time
me to go
travel
in the
is
past?
a Caucasian pursuit.
He goes, "There's no time. Yeah, there's absolutely no time in America, and I can go. That's a good time for me." And
Let's go back to 1985.
It's about, maybe that was a good year. I think that was like Breaking came out.
Close to the cutoff.
I gotta tell you this, and I gotta get your take on this. A Republican congressman who I never heard of before, about an hour before we started recording this. I don't know where he's from. He is on the short list for Donald Trump's VP. His name is Representative Byron Donalds. And again, I don't know what district he represents. I didn't have a chance to look into that. And he made the observation that Black people were better off during Jim Crow.
Ooh.
He said, I'm just going to let you go on with, he said, during Jim Crow, the Black family was together. Black people have always been conservative minded, but more Black people voted conservative back then. First of all, during Jim Crow, they weren't voting. And if they were voting, their votes weren't counted. I mean, family members who lived in Jim Crow Birmingham until 1945.
It was so many voting restrictions, and they made them take tests that were just impossible to pass. How many peanuts or how many jelly beans are in this jar? I mean, it was that kind of crap. And that's the voting part. But I mean, it's such a preposterous statement to make. But just I'll take your thoughts on that, and your thoughts that a Black man said this. That Black people were better off under the Clarence Thomas School of Politics. I've heard it said many times. There's a lot of Black people that feel this way. And truthfully, yes, Black people are religiously conservative. I think the reason we've had to vote more liberally is survival tactics, because when you look at the conservative people, you realize, oh, they're actually trying to kill me. And I get the Democrats are not necessarily helping us, but they're not trying to actively kill us. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's like, like those people are going to stab you. We're just going to beat you. So, you want to be stabbed or beaten, homie. At least if you get beaten, you could get up. Stabbing, that's So it's one of those things. Like, actually, if he really knew anything about Black history in America, Reconstruction was actually the best time for Black people in America, because they literally just left us alone. They literally said, "Go over there. This is your town. This is your land. You do what you do here. Here's your banks. Here's your schools. Here's your hospitals. Leave us alone."
They didn't just leave us alone. There were Union troops who were sent to the South to protect those people from those the former Confederacy, who were not happy with the fact there were equal rights. We had a black United States senator from Mississippi, back in, during Reconstruction. African Americans became landowners and all of this stuff until Reconstruction went away.
And it was just a small, like you said, there's a small fringe of, there's all, like in my philosophy on humanity general, there's extremes on both ends. There's the extreme, in my opinion, is 10% of total public. It's 5%, 10% extreme. Everybody we're all in the middle. We're all moderate sometimes. We're liberal sometimes. We're conservative at times. Mm-hmm. We all fluctuate. It's kind of like the spectrum. We're on a societal spectrum where some of us are more conservative at times than we are liberal at times. But then there's those who choose the extreme and stay on the extreme. Mm-hmm. And yes, during Reconstruction, there was definitely an extreme. But for the most part, in the middle, most white people were just like, we just don't want to deal with them. We just don't want to see them. We don't want them in our neighborhoods. Let them have their land, and we're good. And that was actually the best time, because, this whole idea that the Black family isn't together anymore is quite, sorry, I was going to say a word that would get me canceled. It's quite stupid, because I grew up with a Black father and a Black mother in the same home. I'm not going to say it was perfect, but they were there.
I did off and on.
I know so many Black people that did grow up in this dynamic. So it's always weird when I hear these Black people, especially the ones that are trying to pander to their white racist friends, saying, "Oh, Black families aren't together anymore because we don't think like y'all." Like, yeah, I don't. He's not invited to the cookout anymore.
I'm going to take issue with one thing you said because I want a clarification on that, and I don't think that it's right to paint conservatives with the MAGA brush and with the extremist brush because that's not what real conservatism is. And I have a philosophical disagreement with a lot of it, but primarily, if you boil it down to its essence, true conservatism is they want lower taxes and they want less government. I mean,
Yes.
those are the two basic tenets of conservatism. It's not all of this crazy crap. It's not Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jewish space lasers and, idiots denying science and saying that Dr. Fauci should. But by the way, did either of you read or watch any of this Fauci stuff? The hearings that they held?
But he's still alive. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, but he's got death threats, and he talked about it. About the fact that he's got death threats and and there are people, but credible death threats where there are people who have been arrested because they were actually, by credible, he means that they were coming to kill him. Yeah. And it's just absolutely ridiculous because if you look at the lives that this man saved, and the thing that just really upsets me is how COVID got politicized and masks got politicized and vaccines got politicized. And according to the NIH, there are 100,000 people who are dead because of politics, because of the fact that they wouldn't wear masks when they were told to, because of the fact that the right wing was telling them not to, that they were being controlled and wouldn't take vaccines, took horse dewormer and stuff instead. 100,000 people. 100,000 people.
I'm sorry. The horse dewormer people had to go. I'm sorry. There's natural selection and there's natural selection. And I'm not going to look at the Lord and say, Lord, why did you take these people who was drinking and taking horse tranquilizer? Why did you take them? Be like, Lord, hallelujah. Sometimes you got to just look at the blessings and say, Lord, thank you for being so good to me.
Well, most of those people who died were in red states. The majority of those people who died were in red states because they listened to that they didn't socially distance. They thought it was a hoax and everything else. I've told this story on this podcast before, but ever since we've been on this channel, so I'll tell it again. I got a friend in Phoenix who I go and visit a couple of times a year. And when I was there shortly after everything opened up, about the first 8 months after everything opened up, I wore a mask everywhere I went. If I left my house, unless I was going to be outside the whole time, I was masked going to the store, everywhere. I wore a mask. So I'm going from my hotel to get in my Uber in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I've got my mask on, and I get in the Uber and the driver doesn't have a mask on, and Arizona being a red state, or now they're saying a purple state, he says to me, you don't have to wear that mask if you don't want to, because I'm safe. My wife and I take our ivermectin every single day. Ivermectin is being the horse dewormer.
Yep.
And a buddy of mine who has horses here in Northern California, which is where I am and where Justin is as well, was telling me that his vet has to lock it up in a safe because people were burglarizing veterinarians' offices and to get it instead of just going to CVS or Rite Aid and your insurance was covering the shot or it was free. Instead I'm going to burglarize a vet.
Maybe we're in the new dark ages. Like we've gone so far into technology that we've gone dark again. And we just have to get through these next couple of years of people being stupid to get back. I feel like, the caveman that discovered fire, right? He made fire by and then he started burning people with it. And that was the dark part. Like he started burning people like, just burn, I feel that's where we are right now in our society. Whereas we have these people who have decided that we've gone so far into information and technology that they have to hold on to some primitive mindsets of not listening to people who are professionals at science and medicine.
Yeah, I'm with Chris. If your pharmacy is a Tractor Supply store, you need to go. That's just the long and the short of it.
Like, I don't want you dead. For you people out there, we are not asking people to die. We're just celebrating the natural selection of life. That's all.
I called it Darwinism in real time. I mean, I don't want to see anybody die. Whether I agree with you or disagree with you, I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I don't want to see anybody die. But to lose 100,000 people, I mean, think of how differently things would have been if Trump had not been president during that pandemic. Number one, it would have been taken. I mean, they made such a big deal, the right wing, over the fact that in the Obama administration we had 3 cases of Ebola or 4 cases of Ebola or something, and had Trump been president, that would have been a pandemic. But
we would all die to that.
Yeah, he didn't take COVID seriously at the beginning, and then once it became clear how serious it was, he withheld information and ordered Fauci and Deborah Birx they took things out of their daily briefings that they thought made the administration look bad. But just think if we had a president. I'm sorry.
He even made it racist. He even found a way to turn this global pandemic, which affected everybody, into a racial attack of Asian people. Remember, we had to do Stop Asian Hate in the middle of all that?
They're calling it the Kung flu.
Yeah, we had to stop. We had to actually protect our Asian friends. And then they tried to flip it and say it was black people attacking Asians. Like, no, it wasn't. It was a couple instances where black people robbed Asian people, but they robbed everybody. But the fact that they literally were attacked. Like Asian people in southern states were being attacked by
not just southern states and New York. I mean, it wasn't just southern states; it was all over the place.
Right.
It was all over the place. I take that back.
Sorry, South. Sorry, southern states. You're not all bad.
There was
a
lot
jerks
of that
in Cali.
San Francisco.
Yeah, that's right. San Francisco has a large Asian population, and there was all kinds of it.
That's right. There was that one dude. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few. Yeah.
So, all right, I'm going to change topics, and this will be the last thing I want to discuss, and especially what your take on this, Chris. If you look at the current edition of Variety, the show business magazine, on the cover, we've got Kenan Thompson and Bowen Yang from SNL. And it's an interesting conversation that they have, because one of the things they talk about is a couple weeks back, Dave Chappelle, who you travel with, who you open for frequently, made a cameo standing on stage during the goodbye segment. At the end, how they're playing the music underneath. All right, thanks for watching. And they do a release, and everybody comes on stage. And Chappelle wasn't on that show. He was not a part of that show, but he came out there for the goodbye. And so he's standing back there, and Bowen Yang, who's gay, is standing on the other side of the stage. They got a picture of him with his arms crossed and kind of giving Chappelle the side eye. And Chappelle's gotten a lot of grief for comments that he's made that have been considered transphobic.
Let's say jokes, because he's never made any comments. He doesn't talk to
jokes. Okay, that's right.
These are all jokes.
That's fair. Jokes that he's made that have been considered transphobic or anti-LGBTQ+. And so the thing that they talked about is, well, first of all, Bowen Yang says that he just stood where it was always staying, and he wasn't, that wasn't about Chappelle. It's just, just the picture they took, and people, drew their own conclusions from it. But they talked about whether or not you can separate the artist from the art. And they make some real good points. They talk about, for example, can you still watch The Cosby Show? Can you still listen to Michael Jackson? Can you listen to R. Kelly? I can't listen to R. Kelly after seeing the R. Kelly documentary. I just saw the Kevin Spacey thing, and I like Kevin Spacey's work a lot, but after seeing that Kevin Spacey documentary on Max, I got to tell you, I just can't. I just can't do it.
I feel like there's a difference between art and artists. All right. If I'm on stage doing my art and I say something that's offensive, that's me and my art. So you can critique my art in that sense. Like, I didn't like that joke because that joke felt racist, blah, 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 whatever. That's my art, but that's not necessarily who I am. When you get R. Kelly was singing about having sex with underage girls. It seems like you're ready, 12 play. Like, all these songs were innuendos to him doing his crime. Chappelle said jokes on stage that people didn't like. We have no sound bites of Chappelle off stage saying anything negative about the gay community or anything, and stuff like that. As far as The Cosby Show, I feel like you can still watch The Cosby Show, because somebody made a good point to me that I didn't trip off, is that when you look at a show like The Cosby Show, yes, Bill Cosby is the name on the show. He's the lead actor, but Felicia Rashad was on that show, Malcolm Jamal Warner, Raven Small, all these other black actors who had nothing to do with that, who
aren't getting a dime, who've lost all their residuals now,
who were working their ass off to create a great show. We're talking the Gip, the Grip, the Gaffer, the director, all these people who had nothing to do with this crime, who put their heart into this art, into this show. I don't feel it's fair to them that we discard the whole show. No, I'm not going to watch Bill Cosby's stand-up. No, I'm not going to go see Bill Cosby. But I feel a little different when it comes to when it's a collective thing as opposed to an individual person. R. Kelly sung about having sex with underage girls. Michael Jackson, I'm still on the fence with because there's conflicting stories. And a lot of the people that said he did it came out and said they lied. So I it's a dealer's choice.
That's how it is for me too. Go ahead.
Can I probe part of that with you, Chris, for a second? So the collaborative thing is interesting. And I do hear what you're saying about the Cosby Show. There are lots of Kevin Spacey films that are great ensemble pieces. So with R. Kelly, with Michael Jackson, I'll just stick with those two.
Okay.
Aren't there a lot of musicians on those tracks? Aren't there a lot of producers? Aren't there a lot of songwriters? Isn't that a collaborative act?
I would say for R. Kelly, no, because R. Kelly produced and wrote and did a lot of his.
R. Kelly.
Yeah, R. Kelly basically was a one-man show. He did it all. Like, yeah, he produced, he wrote, he recorded, it was his studio. It was the only collaborative part, I believe, was when other artists would come on the songs with him. But I can sacrifice those songs because those artists have other songs that I can listen to. There's going to be some
casualties in all.
Yeah, it will be.
But then what about Michael Jackson? Because
like I said,
T. Jones, we're talking about a lot of other people.
Yeah. And that's why I say Michael Jackson is a dealer's choice for me. Because
Michael Jackson, I'm not sure, and that's the problem. I mean, there's some compelling. Well, clearly there's something wrong. There's no reason that a 40-year-old man should be sleeping in a bed with a 12-year-old kid, unless it's your 12-year-old kid and it had a nightmare in the middle of the night.
But we have to keep in mind, Michael Jackson did not grow up like the rest of us did to 40 years old.
Yeah, but people always say that, and that's a cop-out.
No. It's not a cop-out. No. Right. It's actually not a cop-out because until you meet child stars, people who were forced into adult situations at a young age, you don't understand their mentality. Michael never saw himself as an adult. He saw himself as a kid. He literally he was stunted in his growth. He never got a chance to be an adult because anytime he would try to be an adult, because if you ask Miley Cyrus, as JoJo Siwa, as any of these child stars who have had to navigate going from being a child star into an adult star, they'll always tell you, people want to keep you as a kid. They will keep you as a kid until you do something. And the fact that
they didn't molest children.
But here's the thing. Those people said he didn't either. That's the whole thing.
But there are some who say
Cyrus has come out
but he was not
Michael
convicted.
Jackson didn't
but
molest
also,
children.
No, the victims, the people came out and said, my parents made me say that. I was paid to say that. There's evidence that it wasn't as cut and clear as we're saying. So that's why I say it's a dealer's choice. If you believe that's what he did, I'm not going to judge you. But I'm also not going to sit here and ignore the fact that some of those victims came out and literally said he didn't do that. He didn't do that to me.
Can I circle back? Because I want to say something about Chappelle before we get out of here. I disagree, Chris. I don't think Chappelle just tells jokes. Saying Chappelle just tells jokes is like saying Picasso just paints paintings. Chappelle's jokes are his art. His art is his power. His power comes from those jokes. His money comes from those jokes. His ability to protect himself come from those jokes. They are not just jokes.
But here's the thing. When did I say he only tells jokes? I said all the things that people are mad at were said in jokes. Not that he didn't. I literally said people were mad because he said jokes.
Source of his power, because that's a common thing where it's like they're just jokes. They're not just
any comic though. You can say
exactly. We can all say that. Here's the thing. Here's why I can also say it, because Chappelle took Flame Monroe on a national headlining tour doing arenas. Flame Monroe is one of the biggest trans Black comedians out there. None of the people that are mad at him can even name a trans comedian. Okay? Dave And as artists, as comedians, I can put it like this. We are supposed to say things that are a little bit off color and not supposed to be said. We as comedians, and I'm not saying like, we can't be wrong. I'm not saying the jokes can't be funny. I'm not saying people can't be offended. What I'm saying is when we start taking comedians when they're on stage purposely being facetious or outlandish or over the top, and we take that and we put it into real life, we're losing the point of the joke of what comedy is.
But that's just R. Kelly. R. Kelly.
R. Kelly sang songs about R. Kelly actually. R. Kelly. Wait. Hold on. Let me finish, Justin. R. Kelly used that money. R. Kelly used the money from singing those songs to hurt those women. Dave Chappelle's not using. Dave Chappelle's not taking his money and going out and hurting trans people. There's completely different
trans people.
No.
He's hurting trans.
Are you trans? Are you trans, Justin? Are you trans? Because if you're not trans, how are you saying he's hurting?
Anybody from the trans community get upset? I don't have
bro. I just went on tour with a trans comedian.
What is Justin?
I just went on tour with a trans comedian. I have friends who are trans, and we talk about this. And I can tell you, I'm gonna tell you this straight up. No black trans people, not none, but a majority of black trans people are not upset about these jokes. The most people that are upset about these trans jokes are people who are not trans, are people who are allies to trans. And here's the thing, you don't have to like the jokes. I'm not saying you have to like the jokes, but let's not go on this whole thing saying he's hurting trans people, making jokes about it, because nobody's saying he's hurting black people when he makes nigger jokes. Nobody's saying he's hurting Asians when he makes jokes about his wife. Nobody's saying he's hurting anybody but these people when he makes a joke. And on top of that, Dave's been around for 30-some years doing comedy. He's done literally every special that we're mad about. The trans section was literally like 10 minutes of an hour-long special where he talked about so many things. So it'd be different. It would be totally different if Dave was off stage supporting these ideas, saying, you know what, trans people don't deserve lit. If he was out there, but if he's making jokes about the observation that he sees as a 50-year-old black man of this intersection, because what people don't realize is he was never talking about trans people. He was always talking about racism. And the one thing that I can tell you is that I've experienced this type of racism from the gay community. I've experienced racism from white gay people. So the point he was making wasn't that trans people are bad or they don't deserve. What he's saying is the intersection of oppression. When somebody who comes from privilege, who has never been oppression, and comes into the world of oppression, it tells people who have been oppressed and marginalized their whole lives that they have to now basically fall in line behind them. It's the same thing that happens all the time. Whenever a person who is not black does something that is black, people fall all over themselves to say that's Elvis Presley.
Racial appropriation.
It's been basically that. So it's not that Dave was saying trans people are bad. He wasn't, but he was making jokes about our society and what's going on in our society. And what's going on in our society is we are having a discussion about gender and gender neutrality and all these crazy things. And everybody is trying to figure it out. And for him to speak on it, it's not him saying, I hate these people. It's saying, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I see. And you don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. But to stretch and say that his jokes are actually hurting trans people, when trans people are not being hurt because of Dave Chappelle's jokes, they're being hurt by legislators.
Okay, wait, back up.
No.
How can you say that?
No, let me finish. They're being hurt by legislators. Give me an example of a trans person. Show me. No.
I will if you let me.
Let him speak.
It all started with Bowen Yang standing on the sidelines, giving him side eye. This all started from that conversation, that SNL where he comes out.
But he said he wasn't. In variety, he said he wasn't.
That there aren't feelings there. That's a.
But wait, listen to what Brian said. Bowen said, I wasn't mad at him. I wasn't looking at him. See what I'm saying? See, that's you taking your projection and saying that somebody else is saying something when they might not be feeling it.
Hang on, Chris. But and Chris, take this however you want to take this. But the way that I looked at it in reading his comments about, oh no, I always stand there and it's just one shot and they took it out of context. That was CYA. That was,
Exactly.
that's how I looked at it. And again, I don't know Bowen Yang. I never met Bowen Yang. Chappelle, I knew Chappelle before Chappelle was
There
Chappelle.
are plenty of
Well,
people who are
I can
upset
tell you this.
in the trans community and outside of it. To say that there aren't is like myopic.
I didn't say that they are. I didn't say that. See, you're taking my words. You're not hearing. I said they
You
weren't.
literally
hurt.
just said over
No.
and over again. His
They
words
weren't.
are
No.
hurting
We're
trans
talking
people.
about hurt. No. Being mad about something is not hurt. If you're mad at something, that doesn't make you
It's
hurt.
just
When I'm talking, no. When trans people are actually being killed in the streets because they're trans, not because of Dave Chappelle jokes, because they're trans, come and tell me when someone is beating a trans person and say, that's from Dave Chappelle.
That's the bar you're putting on this? The
Yeah,
bar
I
you're
am.
putting on it? The bar he's going to put on it is that unless somebody comes up and does a Dave Chappelle bit and then beats somebody to death, I guess there's nothing to it, guys.
Well, but there's more to it than that. And that is, it's
Sorry,
a lot of
computer's
it.
about to die.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I wasn't running off on you, Justin.
I never
My computer's dying.
before. But here's
That's
the
all right.
argument.
This is good TV.
This is great TV. Here's the argument that can be made, and that is that when you, and I'm not saying that this is what Chappelle's doing, because I'll be honest with you, I never saw that special. I don't know what he said.
It's not one special.
I never.
It's the last four specials.
The last four.
Four
Okay.
specials.
Okay,
He's
I've never
made jokes.
Hang on a second.
It's not 10 minutes.
Back up. I have never heard any of the
It's not.
jokes. But if you do anything, and I'm not saying this is what he's doing, I'm just putting this out there. If you do something that fosters a climate that otherizes trans people, then what you're doing is making things okay, such as a policy that Trump says he will enact if he's president to punish hospitals that provide care to trans people, to punish school districts that have any kind of special accommodations for children and adolescents and those who happen to be trans, in which case that is hurting trans people. If you do things or say things that help to foster that kind of an environment. Now, again, I'm not saying that's what Chappelle's doing at all, not by any
I'll
stretch.
say it. That's exactly what he's doing.
So
I
That's
can't
how
say
they took it. That's how you're taking it. But that's not what he did. Like, honestly, name me the joke where he said,
sounds like
I
a
hate trans
Trump
people.
defense.
No.
It sounds like what people say when they want to
We
defend
have
Trump.
evidence.
Guys, one at a time.
We have evidence. You can literally go to these jokes and go through the jokes and tell me the joke where he said something that you feel was harmful to trans people, other than him speaking his opinion on what he sees.
Okay, is there anything that he said that you can make the argument that by saying that he otherizes, and I'm asking again, I'm going to say this again. I'm going to say this again. I don't know what he said.
I can't quote Trump's bits either, and I know they're harmful.
In your opinion, because I'm sorry,
Are we going to debate the opinion?
We can, because it is your opinion. Because you're trying to speak. You're trying to speak for the whole trans community, and that right there is the problem with your privilege. Is because you're trying to speak for a whole community that don't all feel the same way. Yes, there are trans people who don't. No.
To feel the same way.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you don't get to speak
The
for
black
them.
community doesn't need to feel the same way, but I speak up when I see people speaking wrongly about the black community too, and not all of you need to feel the same way.
Maybe we don't need you to speak for us. Maybe that's you should take that approach. Maybe we don't need you to speak for us. Maybe we already know the things that are harmful to
Chris,
us.
I guess this goes back to the thing of I guess I don't really need to speak up or do anything for anybody in this world, since I guess as far as you're concerned, nobody should be saying anything about anybody.
And that's a very white privileged stance to take. I don't have to do anything. That's your privilege. You can actually disconnect. You could disconnect and not have to do that. It's the privilege you have, Justin. I'm sorry you don't want to accept it, baby. But that's the privilege you got with that skin.
Let me hang on a second. Let me throw this in. Have you guys heard of a book that was done in the 50s, I believe, or early 60s called Black Like Me, where it was about the white writer who wanted to find out what life was like in the Jim Crow South, so he darkened his skin and impersonated an African American man and lived, I think, 6 months or a year in the South. And wrote a book that was critically acclaimed. They made a movie out of it, and it's considered a classic. Well, there is a young white man in his 20s who just did the same thing, and did so I think the book's coming out now, or it's just come out, and he's just being vilified for it. they're saying it was cultural appropriation and racial appropriation and how dare you say that you're going to go out there and spend an hour with spend rather a year or however long he was in the Black community and tell me what my life experience is because you were able to change back if you wanted to. So do you think he said he was just trying to understand and trying to help other people to understand what it's like and what the daily indignities are and things you have to deal with, when you are an African-American person in this country. Do you think that what he did was offensive in any way?
No, it's not offensive to want to know what people's experience is. That's not, but I also do feel on the other hand, like it's unnecessary. You don't have to really go do that to find out what Black people are going through when you can just talk to Black people. You can just believe Black people. Like, that's like me saying, I'm going to dress up as a woman and go see what rape is like because, I just want to know what it's like to be sexually assaulted. And it's like, I don't have to do that. I could literally just listen to women. I could literally just take my defenses down and say, what is it like?
But the argument I would make is that you can listen to them and you can empathize with them, but you still can't get it because you haven't walked.
Yeah, and that's the base.
His whole thing was he was trying to walk in the shoes of that community in order to understand.
The funny thing is he already knows. That's why he did it. He already knew what was going to happen. That's why he did it. I think the offensive part comes from like when you don't do anything afterwards. You know what I mean? Like just doing the experiment of writing the book. Great. Now, what are you going to do to help change it? What are you going to what methods what are you going to do to help change it? Because preaching to Black people that is messed up is just redundant. It's stupid. Why? Yeah, we know. Don't come preach to us. Go tell your family. Go tell your cousin. Go tell your uncle that keeps voting for Trump. Go to those people. And writing a book about it, those people still aren't going to know because they're going to just read it and they're going to be like, I think they had a term for people like that back in the day. It was in lovers. They would have called him an N-word lover. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not impressed with somebody that's going to go do that in this day and age. Maybe back when it first happened, it might have been a little bit more because we were a lot closer to the very bad part and there was still segregation and there was still all this going on. But to do it now is just kind of
there's so many microaggressions and things. Well, it's like I have a friend, a Jewish friend, who has very close ties to Israel and owns property in Israel and visits several times a year. And just the things that he tells me, and this is someone who's, I'm not going to say who it is, but it's someone who's well known. It's someone who makes a lot of money. It's someone who is in the arts and is renowned.
Seinfeld.
No, he's being buried.
Name drop much?
No, it's not. No, it's not Seinfeld. I've never met Seinfeld. And it's not Seinfeld.
I know, just say it, fam. Just say Seinfeld.
No, it's not a comic. I will tell you it's not a comic. But the thing.
Well, we know it's not a comic because he has property. We know it's not a comic. Oh God.
But the things that he's telling about the anti-Semitism now, and just how much worse it is, and how blatant it is, and it's things that me not being Jewish, I had never seen and never really thought about. I've never seen that in front of me. You know what I mean?
Weird. I'll tell you this. I had an experience a month ago. I don't do a ton of stand-up dates anymore. I'll do a couple a month. I do a lot more storytelling and a lot more writing these days. But I've had this bit for a while that morphs and changes, but it revolves around this idea of me saying how I'm Jewish and, where are my Jews at? Raise your hand if you're Jewish. And somebody always raises their hand. It's like, that was a test. Put your hand down. They're looking for us. What's wrong with you? And I started to feel more and more nervous doing it because I could feel the energy in the room start to shift over the last 3 months or something. It'd be like, oh, it's like, it's not as funny. It's not as funny. It's not as funny. And then like a month ago, I was at a show, probably like 100 people there. I do it nobody raises their hand, and that's fine. I have like a different way of going with that, where it's like, well, okay, well, now I'm uncomfortable because you're all looking at me. And then somebody stands up and says something, shouts something. I'm trying to remember what it was, because it was such a shocking experience in some ways. And somebody just shouted something along the lines of like, yeah, you cheap fuck. I mean, something along that. Something, and like
Wow.
It's hard because it's just in that moment, I have this like choice to make where it's like, I can choose to diffuse, I can choose to engage, I can choose to get angry. Like, what's the play here that keeps this thing cohesive and doesn't maybe blow it out of the water? And I try to engage with it. And then he comes back with another, like, maybe you should just leave. And nobody's coming to my defense. And I have this moment where I actually like look around the room, kind of like looking is like, is this going to be okay with everyone? And basically it was okay. And I just put the microphone down and said, if nobody's going to be here for me, I don't need to be here. And I just left.
Wow.
I feel you. I've actually been in situations like that similar. Yes.
Do you remember, Chris? Like 5 years ago, I used to run a show at that brewery in Oakland, and you came out. It was Federation Brewing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but it was packed. That was a fun show, but it was packed. It was standing room, and you were doing your set, and I was standing behind the bar, and this Australian man, maybe New Zealand, yells to you. You make a joke, and he yells out, "You didn't know your dad." And again, just like this. And you were very smooth with it. I remember watching it going like, just like, that's a guy who knows how to handle this.
Oh, God, yeah.
What did you say?
Remember that.
Remember what you said?
You remember what happened? You was
something about my dad.
And you were just kind of like, it was like, I did know my dad like that. And you started to go into another bit. And then he started to walk towards the stage. And I had to put myself between the two of you. And I had to get out. And I remember you said, you pointed at two other black guys in the crowd and you said, can you go with Justin? Because somebody's going to kill that man. And they did. They got us and walked with me to his car. And we put him in his car because it's deep in Oakland. And there were a lot of black people there that night.
Yeah. Well, it's Oakland. I mean, no, I mean, I've been in this because also I did another show in McCullough Hill, where it's somewhere past Manteca. It's in the MAGA area of California.
And we're all over the place, by the way. So we say Manteca is in Central California near Stockton.
Yeah.
And this lady got mad at me because like she was talking and like at first I did a joke and she loved it. And then I asked her to be quiet and she got mad and poured a drink on me. And nobody removed her. Nobody got up and helped me. They just watched her do it. And in that moment, I felt so alone. And it was really me and no other black people there. And the only difference was in that moment was I didn't leave, but I stopped doing comedy. And I started talking to them about how they allowed a black man to be assaulted in their presence and did nothing. And this is what we fight for. This is why I shamed him, because at the same time, she poured the drink on me and said, I'm going to call my cousin, the sheriff, and get you shot. That's what she said. That's what she said on her way out, because we're in the sticks. We're in a place where she probably might know the sheriff. She said that to me, and none of them booed her. Nobody said anything to her. And then they tried, oh, well, she's just drunk and da-da-da. And then, it was just like, yeah, that's no excuse, fam. I'm out here by myself. I had to tell him, you know how scared I am right now? I almost came to tears. So I was like, I am frightened for my life right now because I was assaulted and I can't call the police because they probably her family. So
what did you do? How did you get off? Did you just walk off or did you close? What was your close?
I did 45. I did 45 minutes of time where I just basically shamed them and made them realize how fucked up they were. And also just talking about, and I admit I roasted her a little bit afterwards because one dude did stand up and say, she just mad because her son didn't make the basketball team. I was like, okay, but it's then like you were saying, just it's one of those moments where you realize that you're entertaining people that don't respect you. And they'll laugh at you and they'll laugh at you roasting other people, but they won't stand up and protect you because they don't understand that we are alone in those situations.
I've had one situation like that. I'm just thinking about just one situation. I've had things, people say stuff off stage. You know, when I was a road comic, you know, people say, say things in the parking lot and things like that. But the only time ever on stage that I can recall, I was a young comic, brand new. I was like 19. I started when I was 18. I started the week after I graduated high school is when I started. So I was like 19 and I was at this biker bar. And that's really the only way to describe it. It was a biker bar here in the suburbs of Northern California. And I don't remember what the joke was even. It was a joke about how all these guys who all had like 5 million keys on the ring, and the keys were on a chain on their wallet. I mean, on their jeans. You know, their keys were chained to their pants. You know, and it had like, you know, the like a chain that extends. So you pull the keys out and it can extend. Yeah. And I just, all I remember is the setup, and I said something along the lines of, "What is it with you guys with all the keys on on a chain? Why are they chained to your pants?" And some guy stands up and yells, "It's so the niggers don't steal them." And exact same situation. I'm the only black face in the room. I'm the MC too, by the way. So I got to bring up the other acts. I'm the MC. As I said, I'm a brand new comic. I've been doing it 6 months. I had not dealt with hecklers much. And especially, even, now, being able to deal with a heckler in a situation like that, I still could end up getting killed, and all I remember is I just said, what do you say to that? What do you possibly say to that? So I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, our next act." Sometimes that's
the way to go, man.
And I walked off because what else was there? I did no more material the rest of the night. I just brought up the acts as I was supposed to do, and took I think I got $50 or $25 or whatever it was.
Tore out of there.
And tore out of there. But that's exactly it, because you do realize nobody said anything. Nobody said, "Hey, man, that's not okay," or they didn't laugh. Had they laughed with him, that would have been really bad. Had they laughed with him. But no, but I understand that feeling, and you can't understand that feeling unless you've been in that spot. You just can't. So it is a dangerous game that we play for the little guys. It is a really, really dangerous game.
Two black guys and a Jew going to a comedy club.
Now there's other stuff, and I'll leave with this. My friend Steve Marmel. Either one of you guys know Steve Marmel. He's a comedy writer. He's written for, I think he's on Family Guy now, and he wrote for The Simpsons for years. But I knew about, when he was a stand-up, and he used to have a bit. And I last time I talked to him, I mentioned it to him, and he didn't remember the bit, and he laughed at it. But it's one of those things that he could not do today, especially with the climate the way it is. And he goes on stage and he says, I'm a Jew. And we were in Philadelphia. We were in Philly at the Funny Bone in Philadelphia. And he was the middle act. I was headline. He was opening for me. And he says, "I'm a Jew. And there are a lot of people who hate the Jews because they say that the Jews killed Christ. And I'm here to tell you right now that is historically inaccurate. The Jews did not kill Christ. The Romans killed Christ. The Jews probably sold him the nails, but a guy's got to feed his family." and it would get a laugh, and it would break the ice. Say whatever you want to say. You can't say stuff like, there's no way in the world. I don't think he would tell that joke now, because of the fact
he Jewish?
Yes, because the fact that there's so much anti-Semitism.
Well, that's the thing that feels odd. I have another friend who runs a room in Oakland that's been going on forever, and he had an experience similar to mine, where it's people feel empowered to and it's not just that too, because all three of us know this. The amount of audience disruption has skyrocketed.
Oh yeah.
It's
crazy. Due to the crowd work clips. It's not
just sometimes it's not, it happens around the Jewish thing, or it happens around the black joke, or it happens around this, but all of it is like cradled in this, we're supposed to be talking, right?
Mhm.
They think it's a conversation instead of a show. See, it's been a long time since I've done a club set, because when I do one-man shows and I'm in theaters. I mean, I'm dealing with people who are in theaters who paid $35 to $100 to come for a seat to come out and to see me. And it's funny how your mindset as a performer changes, because I spent 20 years in comedy clubs with waitresses dropping trays and blended drinks and all the checks being dropped 15 minutes before the end of your set, so that you lose the audience while they're going, wait, your girl had the fried onion rings and mine had, and all that. Now, when they're there and they're quiet and they're there to see you and they're paying attention, and then somebody unwraps a candy, it's like, what the hell's wrong with you? All this
No, the crowd work videos, while I get it, we're trying to promote ourselves without necessarily burning our material. So the crowd work videos are good for that purpose. But what has happened is the double-edged sword of life is that on the flip side of that, people now think that when they go to shows, we're supposed to always just talk to them. Like, we're going to do an hour of them interacting. And then they feel like they have to encourage the interaction by starting it off. Like, wait, I want to interact. Like, I've literally had people say, I just want to interact. Like, no, this is, and I already have a very talkative, a very open style when I talk, because I talk a lot to the crowd. But when I talk to them, I don't give them leeway to give me I just ask, it's just, hey, you like snacks? Cool. Boom, boom, boom. It's never hey, what's your day like? It's always very precise. And I think the problem is that the internet has kind of evolved to the point where people are only experiencing stand-up through the internet. So when they come to a live stand-up show, they don't realize it's kind of like watching baseball on TV versus watching baseball in person. You know what I mean? On TV, you hear the commentators, you hear the color, you hear all this other stuff, but you don't hear the fans in the stands saying the most terrible things about the ball players. You're not in the trenches of the game. So I feel like that's how comedy is going now. People are not going to see comedy unless they see it online first, and then they go with a mindset that, oh, I'm part of the show.
I'm part of the show. And it's not, what's interesting is that mindset is not just with comedy. I just think it's with all performers. My son Casey is a rapper. He performs under the name Casey Cope, and he performs at these all over the place, all over California. There's this company that puts on these pop-up shows. And what the deal is that if you're on their list, they will send you a thing saying that there is a show in Berkeley tomorrow night at 7. They will not tell you where you're going. They will not tell you who you're going to see. You just know you're going to see 3 acts. They won't tell you what the genre of music is. And it's like the first 75 people, however many seats they got, who buy tickets, then you're in, and we'll tell you 2 hours before the show where the show is. So he does a lot of these all over the place. And some of them are like in people's houses. Some of them are like in backyards. Some of them are in somebody's taking over a club for one night. So he records all these things and he posts them on TikTok, and he'll get, a couple hundred views, maybe, on a decent night, maybe a couple of thousand, views based on what it is he's done. So he's doing his show in Sacramento, and it's in a backyard, and he is in the middle of a song, and the woman who lives next door who has no idea that her neighbor's having a show with 50 people in chairs watching rappers. And she starts yelling out the window at Casey. And so Casey's like trying to talk to her, going, well, ma'am, we're nowhere. What are you doing down there? Well, we're just he goes, I'm just trying to rhyme and say the N-word. and the audience is dying, and he's going back and forth. And that got 1.5 million views. 1.5 million views. And so, again, that's the kind of thing. So they'll go to a rap show, and people will assume that there is no entertainment even a film. But when's the last time you went to a film where everybody kept their mouth shut? Unless you were the only one in the screening.
Endgame was the last movie I saw where people were quiet until that moment where they came through them portals, and that theater erupted. When that was the last time. But now it's so weird.
That's a great movie. People love it. I hate it.
The theater. I never did. I don't miss it.
You know, I don't miss I like going to theater when I take my kids to the movies. That was the best naps
Sure.
I ever got in my life.
Oh, especially if it's one of those like alt theaters where there's like a sofa up front and you're just like taking
Oh my
kids to the
God.
Pixar and you put the boy over there and you're like, great, and just put the one arm on the shoulder and just done.
Yo, it was so dope because my oldest was old enough to take the youngest to the bathroom. So it's like, yeah, take us to the bathroom. I'm gonna sleep.
Well, gentlemen, this is the longest edition of Copeland's Corner we've ever done. So congratulations. We set
It's
a record
for the
today.
really American people.
The really American people. Let me let you guys throw out a plug first. So you're all over the place, Chris.
Yeah, I'm actually just kind of in LA right now. I'll be in New York pretty much the rest of the year after July because I get my name on the Comedy Store at the end of July. Then I'm out of here.
Nice.
But I have so
in New
much.
York? Where are you working in New York?
Well, it's funny we talked about Bo and Yang and all them, but I am trying to pull my strings to get into the Saturday Night Live writers' room.
Awesome.
So I have a manager now. I have management. Shout out to Levity Live. They are my management team. My manager is actually the ex-booker for Conan. So I'm looking forward to that. But I'm doing an album a live taping recording this Friday, June 7th in Bay Area. But more importantly, on June 20th, I will be at Thrive City. That's the Chase Center. It's the outside area of the Chase Center. We'll be doing a big Pride show. By the way, happy Pride to all my people. What's up? We'll be doing a great Pride show with Hella Funny. It's going to be me, Paris Sachet, and I think a couple other acts. But yeah, that'll be July 20th. Just go to my my Instagram, Chris Riggins Comedy. Follow me. I'll let you know everything there. All
right. I'm glad to see you doing so well, buddy. Justin, what's up with you?
Awesome. Next show is this Saturday, True Funny, Concord. You can actually go to the city of Concord. They have a nice
Concord, California. We have people that were all over the place.
Just really nice combination of like 20 minutes of stand-up woven with stories. So I'll be headlining that in like 30 minutes. That's going to be really fun this Saturday, Concord. Come out and see that.
And I am doing my solo show, Not a Genuine Black Man, this weekend. I am at the Marsh in San Francisco on Saturday. I am in Berkeley, California at the Marsh there with my show on depression, The Waiting Period, and that's free to the public. I do that as a suicide prevention kind of a show. And then a week from Saturday, I'll be doing Not a Genuine Black Man in San Jose at City Lights Theater. And I want to mention again, my novel. My first novel is out at a store near you. It is called Outraged. It is a crime novel. What it's about is that somebody is shooting police officers who have shot unarmed Black people without being punished. And my investigator, who is an African-American broadcast journalist, and his SFPD detective sister are trying to find out who's doing it. And book's doing well. If you go to Amazon, I got 4.8 out of 5 stars so far. So I'm doing books. I'm doing book signings all around the place. Just go to briancopeland.com and you can find out exactly where it is I'm going to be. Guys, I appreciate you being here, and I will have you soon, especially you, Justin, because again, people will just like this. They'll love you, or they'll say, "Shut the F up."
I know Chris got me a few times. This is going to be a bad one.
Oh, they're going to hate me. I can already tell.
I don't know.
All the Caitlin Clark fans are going to hate me already. I don't know, man.
You got the cool twisted hair. You got the tie-dye comedy shirt. You're a Black man. I think you're a little untouchable at this moment. But,
Oh, don't forget about the fingernails. I got the.
Once I go, you got the Coke nails on the pinkies. Yeah, you're looking good.
Oh, I do need to cut my nails. You're right.
All right, see you soon, guys. And we'll check you out next week with another panel. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Again, if you're watching us over the Copeland's Corner channel, 2 more weeks, and then you'll only be able to see us here on Really American. If you were listening to us over the audio version of the podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast, you'll still be able to hear us. And I will ask you this. I'll ask you 2 things. If you're watching us, do us a favor and support Really American by subscribing if you don't already. If you're listening to us, please go to your favorite podcast provider and give us a 5-star review if you like the show, because that helps people to find us. So I'll check you out next week. Till then, be kind to your neighbor. He knows where you live.